Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my weekly reflections on different topics. I spent this week obsessing about the topic of knowledge. I am not sure why this is so. I think it started some 2 weeks ago when I started reviewing the thoughts of Dr. Willy Mutunga, Kenya's first Chief Justice under the 2010 Constitutional Dispensation, within the Have Your Say platform. I've been using the platform to remind those interested in Pan-Africanist conversations about the importance of knowledge in building African agency in the self-help international system. In constitution making from the middle, civil society, and transition politics in Kenya, 1992 to 1997, Dr. Willy Mutunga called for an emancipatory knowledge paradigm for Africa, which he thought is necessary to get the continent out of its various quagmires and to set it on a trajectory of socio-economic development after years of marginalization. He had developed his ideas when pursuing his doctoral studies in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a time of fundamental global shifts in the distribution of power. But my obsession with knowledge goes back to when I was introduced to epistemology, or the theory of knowledge, when I was studying philosophy at Egerton University. Epistemology can be summarized as knowledge about knowledge. It raises questions about the meaning of knowing itself, notions of objectivity and subjectivity, the position of the knower vis-a-vis the known, and so on and so forth. Even though in the general scheme of things, books had to compete with Chang'aa, that is the African gene that has been criminalized in Kenya, to create a market for foreign brands, even though books had to compete with that drink for priority during my student days, I was a fairly good student, always curious when introduced to new ideas. Long before I interacted with constructivist or radical theories of knowledge in my postgraduate work under the tutelage of Professor Maria Nzomo and others, I was already aware of the political and ideological connotations of knowledge production and dissemination. I was aware of the importance of knowledge in maintaining a globalized world order that creates privileges for some and disadvantages others. When I was learning communication theory at the University of Nairobi, I was taught, for example, that the media is the conveyor belt for dominant ideologies. That means the ideas of interest of the ruling class of the day. That there is something called editorial policy, which controls knowledge production by the media. That news and commentary often take a slant or angle. This further sharpened my understanding of the place of knowledge in political economy. I am in several virtual epistemic communities which discuss issues to do with African Pan-Africanism. So naturally, I tend to get into arguments every now and then. I find those arguments enriching because they often test my own assumptions. I have also been proactive in using the Have Your Say platform to propagate the thinking of African scholars, politicians, opinion shapers, and so on and so forth over the years. My choice of people to profile is guided by my own understanding of Pan-Africanism and its importance in building African agency, without which the continent is doomed. One of the questions I've confronted this week is in the form, the Africa Rising narrative. I often trace this narrative to an article by The Economist, a key pillar of the Western neoliberal world's knowledge system. At the time the article was written, that world was beginning to contend with the fact that China had overtaken it in terms of influence in Africa. Before that, the same news magazine had published a highly contentious article titled Africa, the Dark Continent. Dr. Mutunga's quest for a knowledge system that privileges Africa's agency and socio-economic progress is far from over. In fact, judging from what folks discuss day and night on social media groups, one could say that quest is under more serious threat today than in past epochs. As a knowledge system, Pan-Africanism is yet to develop The way, say, for example, Confucianism has developed. Confucianism impacts not only on knowledge production and dissemination, but also on Oriental's production mechanisms, interactions with foreign capital, international relations, etc., etc. African scholars have focused more on glorifying Pan-Africanism instead of consistently building it into a coherent knowledge system.